Hi there, this is Paula and Andy, and this is our sustainable living home that we're building as an educational piece, as plus a place for what we're affectionately calling the Geezer House. It's our retirement home. And we've covered this very well in the newspaper here, and this is kind of a new chapter to close off the newspaper thing and pick it up on our webpage site. And so this is our introduction to that, and a thank you for all the things that have happened in the last year.
Well, we want to thank especially our good friend Chris from Corvid Images, who is willing to take a video of us and this project. So we're looking forward to sharing this with you today. Well, considering our age, we started talking about our present location out in the woods, which was off-grid, and we had a lot of land. There was a lot to take care of. And so we said, what about our future? Where are we headed? So we talked, and even though it seemed daunting to make a move, we got excited about the idea of building a new home and making it even more sustainable than our last one.
And when we decided to make a smaller footprint and just shorten up a lot of things. When you live rural, there's some tasks. So living in town will shorten all those up a lot. But more importantly, a house like this in town will give a great deal more opportunity for people to view it and see that it can be done. When we lived rural, out, very much without really an option for electricity, and we did it with photovoltaic panels, people it was just okay. But now if you do that in town where city electricity is definitely available, and you demonstrate you don't need to do that, and from a cost standpoint or an environmental standpoint, it adds a different flavor. There's a different connotation to doing an off-grid home within the city limits, and the accessibility for people to see it, come and experience. We've had a welcome sign out since we started this, and it's been very rewarding. And living off-grid for 18 years out of our rural location, it's real easy to see that how people view it differently when it's in town. So that's been really good. Well, the last home, there wasn't really an option for hooking up to conventional electricity. So, and we didn't know anything about photovoltaic panels. So we've learned an awful lot living 18 years off grid. So we're incorporating what we've learned in 18 years to this location here, and that's really going to help us get closer to a net energy house, which is a bit challenging when you're this far north.
The other thing that we did with the last house is that Andy did some teaching through the Ely Folk School out there to share these principles, and we also had the opportunity to be a part of the Minnesota energy tour, and so both of those things we're going to incorporate living here again and have those opportunities to share with people.
Yeah. And one of the really, really neat things about the classwork we've done on this project and then in the 18 years, the people that are kind of dialed into sustainable living and the green movement, if you will, they bring lots of good ideas and practices from different parts of the country. We had people in our home that had been out, experienced the droughts in California, and here's how you conserve water, and people that have dealt with other environmental issues in their particular location that, as an extreme, and then how you can make that work maybe where you're not forced to, but it works. So it's a learning experience both ways, for sure. I've learned as much from my classmates as they have from me, I'm sure. Well, again, I'll just emphasize again, a lot of the practices were from a learned experience, which we've been doing pretty much ever since we've been together, which is, a couple of decades plus. We incorporated, the house site is probably the principal thing a person should look at. We happen to like solar, so it needed to have a good southern exposure. But I really need to emphasize that if you have an opportunity for a southern exposure, that's great. But there's other ways to do it. You don't have to be in love with solar panels and use them. It's a very good way to get a lot done, but one of my main soapboxes is site specific. You know, you wouldn't necessarily want to pass up a beautiful lake spot that had a northern exposure, but there's other things you can do. So it is site specific, but our deliberate choice was to be in the sun. We're avid gardeners, and solar panels give you some pretty amazing energy. We also incorporated the Cold Weather Building Institute in Fairbanks, Alaska has done lots of really good research on how to build in severe climates, and they came up with what they call the perfect wall. I don't know that I didn't name it the perfect wall, but it's their design, and I don't know if we can, let's come, where can we come for as much as I can explain this. A normal house, the insulation is in the stud cavity. You know, there's bats of insulation and that type of thing. The perfect wall design has all the insulation on the outside of the frame in 4x8 sheets of rigid foam. And in this case, we have 6 inches of rigid foam on the outside of the frame. So the framing members don't break the insulation package. That's what happens if there was a bat of insulation here and a bat of insulation here. If I can do this, still look at the camera. There's a seam here and a seam here, and the wood is telegraphing cold and heat both directions. So, and that's called thermal bridging. So you don't want to do that if you can help it. So the perfect wall, I have a monolithic sheet of rigid foam on the outside of the building, 6 inches thick. Then your electricians and plumbers love this because they don't have to mess with insulation. So it really is a very good way. And then where you got big windows, there's that header up there, which is a massive piece of wood, which is not good insulation. So again, it's just a perfect way to insulate. And the other component of that, when you get to the foundation, that 6 inches of foam just keeps going right down into below grade. So again, there's no break in your insulation. It comes 6 feet out of the ground, all the way up to the ceiling as a monolithic sheet. And that's pretty keen when you think about how many times it would get broken in a seam. So that's one thing we used. The European style window, we got them in triple pane windows, and the glazing on the windows is very important. You want to get that solar gain in, you want to hold it. The film won't do this justice, but you put your hand on this glass on a sub-zero day and it's warm. So it's really important to fussy your glass. And the windows that are on the north side of the house are different than on the south side, as far as the film coat on the window and the argon and different fillings. But the window opens in, and then there'll be a screen on in the summertime. And when you do that, you get a much better closure. Your screen is on the outside. You're not capturing the insects as we have in Minnesota. But they're called tip and turn or turn and tip. So this is they also tip open like this. And the salesmen and the people from Europe say that this is probably all we'll do is we'll just tip them rather than swing them open. You get full ventilation. You're not so much bothered with the, what do you call that stuff? The rain. It's hard to think of rain with this much snow. And when you close them, you feel like you're closing a vault door. I mean, that's serious. So we're incorporating that.
And these windows we purchased through a company in Wisconsin from Superior called Heritage Windows. They worked with us really well, and their salesman explaining to us how the windows work. They also came up, to see the site and help us choose the right windows for this site. And then the owner of the company, when the windows were delivered, came with the windows and really made sure the order was right and gave us good explanation on installation instructions. So that was a great company to work with.
Yeah, they really are focused on making these windows what they claim they're supposed to be, which are high efficiency windows. They're made in Winnipeg, and it's the German design and that type of thing. So it's well worth. It's the most expensive thing I bought in this house is the windows, but we've been in here this winter and it's been phenomenal. There's just no leaks. We don't get any of the frost buildup on the bottom. We had 31 below here a couple of weeks ago, and the glass looked just like that.
So probably one of the favorite things of Andy in using a sustainable practice is all his salvaging of materials. Our last house had he made use of it in many ways. This house, in one particular form, on the footings, he's repurposed some angle iron. Right here, if you look at the top of our stove, the piece that's up on the ceiling, he hauled from our local landfill and cut a hole in it and reused it there as a piece of metal to support the chimney.
Yeah. Now that was 1/4-inch steel used as a manhole cover, so we just cut the chimney hole in it and then sat the big metal Vestas chimney on top of that, so it's really stout versus the normal little straps. And anytime you use recycled material, the building inspector has to okay it. And I might be prejudiced to this thought, but every time we used repurposed material, it was much better than something we would have bought. It was heavier duty, got a bigger purchase in connections. So at no time do you compromise the integrity of the building to use material. One of the things that I really like to think about when you repurpose something, it's not going in the landfill. And then the landfill has to deal with 500-700 sheets. I got 700 sheets to keep the numbers right. We used 500 of them on the house. That's all we needed. Only needed 500. The other 200 sheets I bartered out for other components. So repurposing material makes you feel good right here, makes you feel good in the wallet, and the environment loves it. You're not asking the planet to go to resources and make new stuff. You're not asking the planet to deal with this stuff in the landfill. So it's very, very important.
So we also have used trees that we cut down, and we used tamaracks. So Andy, this was some older wood that he picked up, and so we're using it as a deck for the outside, and that is really good. I mean, you don't have to even seal it because it'll just hang in there for a long time.
Yeah, it's a native wood. And yeah, there's so many windstorms and people putting in driveways and new houses and stuff, and there's a few trees here and there. You got to have it in your head, though. You got to be dialed in to be a scrounge, and I raised my hand on the scrounge. And again, yeah, a lot of our lumber is from 2 trees here and 5 trees there. And so the LED lighting, when you look at the math, is 1/5 the amount of electricity. So 1/5 the carbon footprint, 1/5 of the amount of mercury, and also 1/5 the amount of dollars. So every time you spend $5 on an incandescent bulb, you would have only spent $1 on an LED, and the LEDs last hundreds of thousands of hours. And in the summertime, we've changed some lighting out in some commercial locations here in town. And when we changed them out, they could turn their air conditioner off in the summer. They had so much heat, 5 times more heat from a conventional bulb, they went to LEDs to turn their air conditioner off. So when you start down that path, it can kind of snowball. One thing can lead to another, and that's what you're dialed into.
Well, once again, we'd really like to thank all our sponsors that have been a part of this project. We really like the students we've had here. They've just added a wonderful dynamic to this process. And again, to our friend Chris. He is here today filming us, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll echo what Paula just said. one of the rewarding parts is the students that were here and what they left with and what they brought to us. The press has been very kind to us. There is a lot of effort and people dialing into sustainable living, and we're just so glad we can be part of it and share it with whoever wants to show up and give us a tip, and we'll help them with a tip. So again, thank you, and thank you for this opportunity to be on film and share it. Thank you.